Our top story at this hour, convicted child rapist Gerhard Ackerman has told the High Court in Johannesburg that he intends to appeal his sentence and apply for a retrial. Ackerman has been handed 12 life terms in prison by the court. Of course, he was convicted for 740 counts of crime, including rape, attempted murder, the production and distribution of child pornography and human trafficking. Ackerman was charged alongside acting judge and senior advocate Paul Kennedy, who has since committed suicide.
Evil.
Yes, that's the word he used.
I'm not going to lower myself to that kind of, why do I have to explain myself? Why do I have to tell you who I am? I don't need to do that.
Did you violate small children?
No, never. Never. I've never touched this child. Never.
Then what do we make of all these charges against you?
You have to take each charge on its own, okay? You can't say there's 700 charges and now assume I must be guilty because there's so many. You have to take each charge, okay? And say, okay, this on its own. But
okay, let's put it simple. Did you engage in any sexual nature or conduct with anyone against their will or under the age of 16 or 18?
Never.
What makes you say, why should we believe you?
Because because I won't do that. I've never forced someone to do anything against their will, and I've never touched a person under 16.
We've received a remarkable ruling, more especially when it comes to cases where pornographic material is found in Mr. Ackerman's laptop and cell phone. For those counts, for each of those counts, he has been sentenced to 25 years, which is remarkable. It shows growth in case law. This ruling will definitely go a long way in delivering justice for would-be victims of similar offences that he was found guilty and sentenced for.
We are very happy with the justice meted out today, and we feel the sentence really fits the crime. But we're even more happy that this sentence is for violations against boys, which is very rare. Normally it's the girls who report. The boys are always reluctant to report. So as the National Children and Violence Trust, we are saying this for us is not new because we're in this business of, in terms of counseling children who have been violated and making sure that they get the justice they deserve. But we're saying this is a new step. This judge has taken it to another level. We are saying the violation against boys is just as bad as the violation against girls. And as parents, as communities, and as children, we need to be brave enough to come forward. A standard has been set. This was a very traumatic case. We feel for the pain of those boys, but we're hoping tonight they'll sleep better. They mustn't be alarmed by him wanting a retrial and all sorts of things he's saying. He's been mumbling and grumbling throughout this process. But, of course, the evidence has been piling up. So he wants a retrial just for the fun of it. He wants bail just for the fun of it. But we're very happy, really. This has been worth every tear that every parent of those boys cried. Today, they've been affirmed.
Well, for more on this, we're going to be joined via Zoom by Joan van Niekerk. She is an independent child rights and child protection consultant, trainer to weigh in perhaps on the sentencing of child rapist Gerhard Ackerman, who has now been sentenced to 12 life terms in prison. Joan, good afternoon, and thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Thank you. Thank you for interviewing me on this issue. It's a very, very concerning issue. And at last, we see the courts now taking issues of child sexual abuse images seriously. We have to remember, when people view child pornography, they may feel that I'm not touching a child. But in order for child pornography or child sexual abuse images to be made, because this is what it is, it's child sexual abuse, children have to be abused. And some of the images were extremely concerning. They involved the sexual abuse of very, very young children. And children will carry the impact of that on their lives throughout their lifetime. We know that studies into the long-term impact of abuse on children show us that it's not something that is dealt with just during childhood. The emotional, the physical, the mental impact is carried forward into their adulthood. Having said that, we definitely need to look at internet crimes against children in this country and tighten the legislation and take this form of exploitation, sexual or otherwise, against children a lot more seriously. Our Ministry of Justice has had a report from the SA Law Reform Commission on child pornography with proposed improvements to the legislation for the past 2 years, but has not yet acted on this report. I'm hoping that this trial and this sentence will stimulate interest from the Department of Justice in ensuring that there's comprehensive protection of children against any form of sexual abuse and sexual exploitation.
Well, June, thank you for those sentiments. Obviously, just getting your reaction and really what message it sends out, perhaps how it can also serve as a deterrent. I want to look at Ackerman's reaction. He intends to appeal his sentences and also apply for a retrial. What's your reaction to those sentiments that he'd echoed?
I think it's time that we encouraged sexual offenders to take responsibility for their behavior. And it would be enormously sad if he did this, and if he cares one iota about himself and the crimes he has committed and their impact on children, he will not do that. Because trials involving children are very, very traumatic, even if it is on adults who were abused as children. We find that, going through this whole court process is very, very traumatic. And we appeal to him to accept that the finding of the court is a just finding, and to not appeal, not to ask for a real retrial, which will then impact again on the children who have been violated.
You speak about tightening legislation and perhaps also improvements. One of the victims' moms during the trial came out to say that Ackerman's crimes could have been prevented had, what they reported been taken seriously. Perhaps also prevented other children from suffering the same at the hands of Ackerman. And I wonder if we could speak to the approach that we handle, victims of abuse, perhaps who come out to report these incidences. What more could be improved on that front? And restorative justice, perhaps as an approach to the criminal justice system at large. Is that key for healing? Perhaps also because children are obviously the ones who bear the brunt, their futures affected.
Absolutely, it's key. We see a lot of children in the contexts in which I work who find the court process sometimes as traumatic as the abuse itself. And that to me is really sad, that we are re-traumatizing children through the process that they go through. First of all, sometimes the first report is not believed. That's one thing. Secondly, the interviewers are not always sensitive enough to the children they are interviewing. And we find this particularly with boys who find it extremely difficult to report abuse. Then the process drags on for months and months and months, whereas children would really like to have it done with, and get on with their lives. We forget that sometimes for children, it feels whilst this process is going on, their lives are on hold. We also find that families are traumatized by the process as well, by the length of time it takes. And we really do need to accept that children only have one childhood, that we should try and dispense with the legal processes as rapidly as possible so that children can get on with their lives and recover from the trauma they've experienced and hopefully get the therapy they need in order to move on.
June, I have to wrap up this conversation, but I wanted to just look at dignity and recognition, which has come to the fore, and the rights of victims, perhaps a change over time, short-term and long-term. What does it look like in this case, perhaps now that the sentencing has been handed down?
I think that, yes, the severity of the sentences do to some extent restore some confidence in the criminal justice system. And I think that's really important. And it sends out the message to children, you matter. What's happened to you matters, and we should be protecting children from this. But it is not enough. Apart from the criminal justice system, we should ensure that there are enough therapy facilities available for children who've been traumatized in this way, inclusive of of their families. If my child is hurt, I hurt. And it's important to recognize the trauma impacts on the child and those who are close to them.
June, thank you for those sentiments, for weighing in on the back of the sentencing of Gerhard Ackerman, child rapist, who has now been sentenced to 12 life terms in prison. Joan van Niekerk is an independent child rights and child protection consultant and trainer, really weighing in on the matter.